And brothers and sisters, let me just tell you, here's the truth 101. All of us have the ability to make a difference. In fact, just encourage who's ever sitting close to you, look at them square dead in the eye and tell them you have the ability to make a difference. Because for the sake of the sermonic discourse today, making a difference simply means impacting our environments and the lives of other people for the better. Impacting our environments, be it your school environment, your home environment, your work environment, your community, the ability to impact our environments and the lives of others for the better. Let me just tell you something. If you are a Christian at all, it ought to be a part of your heart's desire to make somebody else's life better. Y'all better talk to me now. Because as we sat there and we celebrated and we sang the songs of Zion talking about thank you, when you think about the fact that God has made our lives better, is that anybody's testimony? When you look over the roll call of your life, well, if he's made your life better, the personal responsibility is to help make somebody else's life better. And our challenge today is just to raise the question, how do we then, as the different of God, engage in making a difference? It says, and he entered into the synagogue, and there was a man there which had a withered hand. Scholars have asserted that this withered hand, this man was once born with the function of his hand, and then throughout the years something began to happen. That's what scholars have asserted. But the fact that Jesus enters into the synagogue, and if you follow what Jesus has been doing in chapters 1 and 2, there is a trend that's getting ready to take place, and there was a man present that had a withered hand. What it lets us know today, saints, is that when Jesus comes into the synagogue, there is an opportunity to make a difference. And see, brothers and sisters, here's what we have to do as we engage in the how. Write this down. You have to seize divine opportunities. Some of us, the reason why we don't make a difference is that we don't seize the opportunities that are right in front of our face. And some of us belittle, let me just tell the truth, some of us belittle what God has placed within inside of us, because we think what we have is not good enough to make a difference. I want you to know today that there is nothing you do that is ever too small to make a difference. Y'all better hear what I'm saying in here now. Because even if your difference is speaking to someone, you better open up your mouth and speak. If you're making a difference, it's cooking something, cook. Because let me tell you something, everybody can't cook. And some folk who can cook are hateful, and they hateful beans and cornbread got spirits attached. Oh, y'all better talk to me now. That's why many of us remember being raised that you couldn't eat over everybody's house. How many folks told your children you couldn't eat over everybody's house? And it wasn't because they couldn't cook. Some of them was mean. And if it is time, give of your time, because for many people, some just want you to just spend some time. If it is giving a financial resource, give that financial resource, because I'm a living witness that when you give of your financial resource, God has a way. How many folk know about the way? God has a way of putting that thing back in return, and sometimes you don't see it overnight. Sometimes it takes a few months. Sometimes it even takes a few years. But good seed sown is a good harvest reaped whenever the harvest manifests itself. And I've seen God do some things that just blew my mind, where you remember giving so-and-so this, and then when you were really at rock bottom, all of a sudden out of nowhere, God shows up in the nick of time. How many know about the God who'll show up in the nick of time? And then you begin to realize that the reaping is a shown up promise of God. And maybe if it's just making people, let me talk to the young folk. Maybe if it's just having an opportunity to make somebody who's not in the cool group feel a part of, make them feel a part of. Because one of the things I remember about high school and Coach A, Marilyn Alford, who's an usher in the church, was my PE teacher. And I remember we had lunch buddies. We had lunch buddies with the special needs students. And so those of us who considered ourselves in the cool crowd intentionally went and ate lunch with those who were in the special needs classes. And one of the things I will never forget is at graduation, one of the mothers told one of my classmates that you made a world of difference for my son because he felt like he mattered. And see, brothers and sisters, don't diminish anything God has equipped you to do, because you never know the impact that it would have on somebody else. I hate to hear people try to minimize what Rosa Parks did. Oh, she just sat down on the bus. No, she didn't just sit down on the bus. What she did, she realized that she had to make a difference. So in her sitting, she launched a revolution. And the revolution that she launched then would open up doors for Shirley Chisholm to become the first African-American woman elected to Congress. And then she would become the first African-American, period, to run for president of the United States. Somebody better write that name down, because we need to teach our children about Shirley Chisholm. We need to talk a little bit more about Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor, who then are now the Supreme Court justices. We need to talk about them because they had to accept the nomination, but they also had to accept what came along with it so that they could inspire not only other young women, but all people from hard places to know that with God all things are possible. Y'all better talk to me in this church today. We need to talk about what it took for Eleanor Roosevelt to open up the White House in her husband's time to people of color, so that Mary McLeod Bethune felt comfortable going to the White House. And then we need to talk about the difference that Hattie McDaniel made when she took the role that won her the Oscar. She also had to hear the criticism from the NAACP. She had to hear the criticism from the folks that said she should never have taken the role in the first place. But what she said, I did it so that some other young person would know that God will open up a door. And sometimes you have to do what God has enabled you to do and listen to everybody else, say everything else, but you do what He has equipped you to do. But you got to be ready. Tell your neighbor, you got to be ready. My favorite Shakespeare quote, because if you go to school, I didn't like Shakespeare, but you got to have a favorite quote now. My favorite Shakespeare quote is from Hamlet. He says, the readiness is all. That means you got to be ready at all times to make a difference. And let me just tell you something. Sometimes the difference that you're making will not happen in a totality of your life. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Some of us get frustrated when we don't see everything come together with what we're doing. But see, Paul reminds us. He says in 1 Corinthians 3:6, he said, I have planted. What he says is, I did my part. Then he comes along and says, and Apollos watered. He did his part. He said, but in the end, the Lord gave the increase. That when you do your part in making a difference, sometimes you're the planter, and then somebody else has to be the waterer. Sometimes somebody else is the planter, and then you're the waterer. But in the end, whenever the difference is made, it's because God gives the increase.